Well, good morning, West Ham fans. Let's talk about Tim's special sauce. Yes. Russell West Ham Network. Hope you're all safe and well if you end here. You know what to do. Happy Tuesday. Hope your week's going so well so far. Obviously, no West Ham to ruin it for the next 2 weeks at least. But we talk about Tim Steidten. And I want to talk about an interview that Sky Sports' Darmesh gave an interview, spoke about that type of thing, but about Tim Steidten and about, I've called it Steidten'S secret sauce. But by all accounts, according to Darmesh, the future West Ham manager will play no role in player recruitment, underscoring the shift towards a more continental style of how a club is handled. Basically, we know X and W and WHUFC employee and several others have said Steidten'S role in West Ham has been elevated to Sullivan's right-hand man and the man in charge of all football operations, which it should be as the technical director. That's his remit. And so it seems that Sullivan's slightly relieving the reins of West Ham in terms of the football side. Now, obviously, traditionally, the manager, particularly in the British game, the manager has a lot of power in terms of the transfer signings, in terms of who comes into the club, who leaves the club. But the more continental style of football, it's very much spearheaded by the director of football, or the technical director, as we call it here. And that would itself lead to West Ham actively trying to appoint a manager who is a head coach rather than a traditional British manager, more of a continental style coach. We know that Moyes has got 1 year left in his contract, and we know that it was leaked on TalkSport exclusively. We know where TalkSport gets their leaks, that Moyes will be unlikely to have his contract renewed. They've kept that caveat of unlikely because, if he won, if he won the Europa League and we're in the Champions League next year, then that might be enough. But even if Moyes were to agree a new deal, it would come with terms which he wouldn't enjoy, because it would be more around being a head coach rather than a manager. And I think Moyes enjoys management. Indeed, he's being quoted saying that he would be looking to stay in management regardless of what happens, basically, at West Ham. So, to stay in the Premier League. So, I think he turns to someone like Roy Hodgson or Roy Hodgson, into his 70s and still, still managing Crystal Palace. So you can see, he's obviously still wants to be in management. He's not going to retire or anything at all. So if he was to have a new contract at West Ham, it would be relinquishing full control. And I don't think that's something that Moyes wants to do. And that's fair enough. That's he doesn't want to do it. Doesn't want to do it. But obviously that eventually had to be far, far, far away, I think, in terms of offering a new contract. But Darmesh commented, saying if he does not continue at West Ham, I anticipate the next manager to take on more of a head coaching role with less influence over recruitment compared to Moyes in recent years. This would likely be a manager accustomed to working in a setup where a technical director selects players and the primary focus of the boss is coaching rather than managerial duties. Effectively, they would serve as a head coach rather than the manager. This seems to be the likely direction for the next appointment. Considering that, as we've emphasised before, it's far easier to replace a manager than to part ways with multiple players tied to long-term contracts. And that would assume the way that the direction of the club and the maybe direction of Tim's special sauce and diluting of powers with the manager becoming a head coach would give you some sort of indication in terms of where the next manager would likely to be. Continental Europe for me is the obvious choice. That's very much seen. You have a head coach and you have a technical director. The only exception maybe would be someone like Brighton, but still, I believe De Zerbi and Potter have, or Potter had, and De Zerbi have a relatively large amount of say. So it is a breakaway from the traditional setup that we've been used to for many years at West Ham. Actually, in a strange way, we were sort of at the forefront, really. If you look back at the appointment of Gianfranco Zola, idiot, Gianfranco Zola, and Gianluca Nani as the sporting director, and that was back in the early 2000s. Zola very much the coach, coaching the youngsters coming through, and Nani would be getting the players in, albeit most of them related to him, i.e. Savio. So we're going back to that system, and I think actually that's the way that all football is moving towards. When you look at, I mean, for some clubs, it's not. The manager still has very much to say, but I think we're looking at this modern approach, and I think it's really refreshing. That to me suggests obviously a younger manager as well, and also suggests a continental manager as well. So, or a manager who is currently managing in continental Europe or has done previously. Maybe someone who's in attendance in the football. I don't know. It was attendance at Nottingham Forest on Sunday. Who knows? Who knows? But and it's interesting when you open up the debate in terms of the next man. There will be a new manager of sometime down the line, whether it is this season, whether it is in the close season, or whether it's after a new contract for Mr. Moyes. So there will be a new manager. People have been obviously Xabi Alonso is someone that's a lot of people are interested in. Will Still is another person that people are interested in. And that people have reluctantly said, oh, trouble is Will he's not very experienced. Xabi Alonso was plucked from relatively obscurity, Real Sociedad B, and then goes straight into a head coach role at a top Bundesliga side, and orchestrated by a committee including Tim Steidten. So he could do it again. I mean, Will himself is probably a little bit more established than in terms of when Xabi Alonso came in. In honesty, he's had basically a full season and a half in the top flight. He's got his badges now. Could it be a worse appointment? The idea is him, as a head coach. He's not, and I think actually he'd fit in well with the secret sauce. Plus, he would appease, I think, the old generation because he is a West Ham fan as well. And West Ham traditionally have players, have had managers who are either, who back in the day were promoted from within, or have some sort of West Ham connection. The likes of Slaven Bilic, coming back, for example. Don't know. But I just thought it was interesting to see, Darmesh being quite open in terms of who the profile of the next manager. I think that rules out the likes of, well, I suppose it depends about how much power you want the manager to have. I mean, looking back, if you look here, we were linked, people like Ruben Amorim from Sporting Lisbon, Roger Schmidt from Benfica. These guys do work under a manager, a management sort of setup in terms of a director of football and then being sort of head coaches. But it'd be interesting to see how it works, who comes in next. In the same way that Tim Steidten gets players in who are maybe not necessarily in the upper echelons of people's football knowledge. So people like Edson Alvarez, for example, not Mavropanos, people might have heard of them, but wouldn't have gone straight away. Oh, we're going to sign Alvarez or we're going to sign Mavropanos. It might be left field. It might be left field. And as people said, in Tim we trust. So, if it is a Will Still coming in, we'll trust him. He's a big lad, actually. I didn't realize how tall he was. Very tall lad. very imposing physically. You know, I know I'm a big lad, but he cuts a very big shape when I was chatting to him on Sunday at the London Stadium, and a lovely guy as well, and a shock of ginger hair, so you can see him from anywhere. You can see him straight from in the press box, no problem at all. Anyway, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Tin special sauce. Who does that mean? Who's going to be the ingredient? Who's going to be the person who comes in next at West Ham? Because there will be someone coming in next. You know, David Moyes is not going to be our manager forever. So who's the next one in? Who's your you know, we've got the international break, so we've got time to think and digest. It's not, and because after the international break, it's basically game after game after game. So you haven't got any time to reflect and digest and think. But anyway, keep it on the channel. Got lots of great stuff coming out, lots of interviews with people from all over the spectrum of West Ham. So keep an eye, don't miss anything. Until next time, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble. If you want free beer, beer52.com/West Ham and claim your free case of 8 exclusive craft beers. All you got to do is cover the postage charge, $5.95, and you get 8 fantastic beers you won't get anywhere else in the world. Take care, stay safe, stay humble, keep the faith. Come on, you bloody irons.